Hello and welcome. As you can see, I've done some stuff. There's some new stuff. This is cool. So they released a new version of the software I use, and so I had quite a bit of fun with it. And this is the product of it. So it looks a lot like the before, but you're going to see some differences going on. So it's pretty cool. If you're new here, my name is Taylor Darcy from Think Legal, where I help people with their legal needs, businesses, you name it, I'm here to help. I go live, these days it's kind of a ebb and a flow, so I'm not going to commit to anything right this minute, but check back regularly for content, because that's what I'm here today. Today, we're going to talk about one of the things that people hate most about attorneys: how much we charge, and the costs, and why it's that expensive, and what you can do to reduce those costs, okay? Because at the end of the day, it's really, it can be tough. And when you're having to explain this repeatedly to people, I wanted to do this video to be able to go over the nuts and the bolts and ways that you can keep those legal costs lower, and you can get the same quality of service that you're hoping for. So with that, let's talk about saving money, okay? Nobody wants to spend more than they absolutely have to. I get it. It's not a thing where people are like, yay, let's spend money on legal stuff. But, and these tips are gonna help you not only save money, but this is one of the key things here. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in law. And it's very true. So a lot of these tips are going to be proactive things that you can do to save money on legal fees. And even if you're not paying out of pocket for it, and we'll talk about different billing structures, even if you're not paying out of pocket for it, so for instance, contingency, right? Then ways to keep more of the money after the contingency factor, okay? So we're going to go over all of that. So I want you to just sit back, ask questions, because that's what I'm here to do, is answer these questions. And let's talk about money. It doesn't have to be a dirty word. And legal, well, people think it has to be a dirty word, but it's really not. So let's talk about this so that you can be an educated consumer and get the most bang for your buck and be happier with your legal services. All right, let's get started, shall we? As always, if you have questions, leave them in the chat. Question of the day is, what confuses you most about litigation? Which, in case you don't know what that word means, and I'm just going to say, litigation is a lawsuit, suing someone, being sued by somebody, the whole process that's surrounding that. So if you're confused by that, leave me I'd love to answer that question for you and help you to get an idea of what litigation really is, what it's not, and how you can have the best outcome possible for it. All right. Understanding your billing. How are you being charged for things? Okay. Request a detailed billing structure at the start. Now, in some jurisdictions, like California, we have to provide that in our retainer agreements, okay? We have to provide how you're going to be billed and what you're going to be billed for. So it depends on your jurisdiction. Some require it, some don't. I do it, I explain things in my retainer agreement, and then I explain how they're going to be charged exactly in the welcome letter that I send to my clients when they retain me, so that they understand that, especially when I'm on the billable hour, that we can, what we're charging you for and when we're charging you for it, okay? Next thing is, review your bills, right? Don't just accept that what you're getting is completely 100% accurate. This can be a rather touchy thing, because attorneys can be notorious for doing a lot of work and then saving it up, and then they bill you it, and it's a huge, big surprise. And you're like, what the heck? This was way more than I was expecting. And I get it. And so some attorneys do it that way. I like to bill more regularly than that, so that people are not surprised and they can deal with smaller bills and they're not like, oh my gosh, I'm paying so much. Okay. The other thing is, so let's talk about billable hour. Okay, that's not on here, I should have, but the billable hour essentially depending on the firm, this is always applicable. So it's always based on what that particular firm does. Different attorneys do different things. So don't think this is an absolute everything. So we're going to talk about first billable. You already talked about flat rates, and then we're going to talk about contingency. Billable is where you are billed an amount per hour that should be disclosed to you. And most firms do it in 6-minute increments or 1/10 of an hour, okay? And so that's what you'll see on your bill is, okay, I've spent 0.1 hours on this thing, da, 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 da. And it lists what it is, or it should list the matter, what it is, what you've done, and then any types of descriptions of what they've done on that, in that particular thing. You should only be billed for the time that's spent on your case. And now that, or matter, that can be, depending upon your matter, it can be very different. To be fair, some matters are very time intensive and are going to cost you more money. And you just have to kind of know that going in. I always prepare my clients for that so that they understand that if I'm defending 2, 3, 4 people, that can get expensive. People are going to have to, it's going to be a different cost than if I'm defending one person. And that's just because, well, obviously, right? I'm defending 4 people, or I have a complaint against 5 people or whatever. I have different tactics and different things that I have to do to either push the case forward or defend. So it just depends on what it is that case matters. So I always try to discuss this up front. Now, here's the key to the billable hour. And if you get nothing else out of this, if you remember I said you bill in tenths of an hour, so every 6 minutes, right? But here's the thing, and this is a little secret that most attorneys don't want to tell you, okay? It does not matter, really, what an attorney bills at their rate, okay? And I'm going to prove it to you right now. If an attorney bills $300 an hour, and I'm just using that as a for instance, and it takes them 2 to 3 hours to do something because they're very inefficient, they don't have processes in place, they don't have systems in place, and so it's very manual, and there's a lot of work that has to be done, and they don't have any way of saving time or cutting that time down, and so they spend a lot of time on that matter. Then you're going to pay more than someone who is more efficient but charges more per hour. Because if you charge, and again, this is just a for instance, I'm not saying this is what you're going to be charged, but if you're charged $450 an hour, but it only takes that attorney an hour to do, then you're going to save money over the people that, even though they're quote unquote less expensive on the billable hour, they're more inefficient. And so you cannot compare an apples to apples, like billable hour wise, when it comes to how you're going to be charged. So just because one person, and for instance, if I solve your problem in less time, then I am saving you money, right? Even doesn't matter how much I spend. If I'm billing at $1,000 an hour, and again, hypotheticals only, not saying anybody's doing this, but I solve your problem in an hour versus I have someone that is taking 3 and 4 and 5 hours to do that same exact thing, then then all of a sudden it makes more sense to pay that $1,000 an hour attorney because of that cost, right? So that's understanding the billable hour. Now we already talked about flat rates. Next is contingency fee. Contingency is based upon the percentage of someone recovers, that the attorney recovers on behalf of the client. Now, how this can work for you or against you as far as like economical purposes are concerned. And again, it isn't always about the percentage, okay? Because a more efficient attorney that's able to get you more money in less time is a better attorney, right? In that respect, because you're getting more money today than you would have if you had to fight for it for years and years and years, okay? So if you can get 20% of 200,000, and I'm just using, or I mean, if you can get 200,000 and you pay the attorney 20%, right? That's $40,000. You got $160,000 now versus if they take 35% later, okay, but it takes you 2 years to get it, okay? Yeah, and you're getting, $350,000 later. Yeah, you're paying more there and you're getting more, but you had to wait 2 years to get it. So the time value of money today is worth more than money tomorrow because you get to use it today. So there's actually calculations that you can do to figure out what time value of money is worth based upon future things. So in other words, if you settle for $300,000 today is worth more because you have use of that $300,000 than if you settled for, or if you got awarded at trial, and I'm just using a number here, I'm just pulling numbers, $400,000 later. Yes, technically $400,000 is more, but you had to wait, right? You had to wait 2 to 3 years to get that $400,000. So you could have had $300,000 now. So don't be so stuck on a number. Look at the value that you're getting at the time that you're getting it. Okay, that's the thing. So that is billing. That is billing. As far as how you can keep contingency costs low, so attorneys don't bill by the hour, so there's no real incentive not to. But if you can be efficient in what you do, right, with them, with the attorney, then you're going to help process that faster. If you are keeping your records and keeping all of these things and keeping your appointments and discussing regularly with your attorney the things that are happening in your case, you're going to help progress it faster than if you are hard to get a hold of, you don't want to talk to your attorney, you're difficult to work with, right? So those are things that you can do to help get your case to go along. Don't be part of the solution to the problem. Don't be the problem, right? Let the opposing counsel or opposing party be the problem, not you. All right, next. So avoiding unnecessary litigation. Wow. New slides equal new program. Love it. So anyway, when you're talking about litigation, sometimes it makes sense to file a motion or do something in the context of litigation because it's needed. You cannot live without it. Your case cannot proceed without it. You have to have it. Okay. Then that makes sense. But if you can find a different way to get the same information or solve the same problem that can push your case forward, then that's what you want to focus on. You want to focus on solving the problem for the least amount of money rather than trying to be right. The more you try to be right and try to hammer the other side, the more expensive it's going to be. Now, if you've got all the money in the world, then by all means, go for it. Do your thing. I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to tell you what you have to do or what you can't do. I'm simply saying these are ways to save money. Don't become overly litigious. Don't try to litigate every point because the other side is not going to cooperate with you. It's not going to be an enjoyable experience. Nobody likes it. So the more you get, if you try to push one point home to the point that it not just hurts your case, but it takes substantial amounts of money to solve that problem, then it's going to cost you more, right? Now, in some instances, you have to. In some instances, you have to. But try to limit those to a very few. And the judge honestly doesn't want to deal with it. So if you're overly litigious, the judge you're going to frustrate the judge, and that's going to potentially hurt your case later. So make sure you're weighing the pros and the cons of doing something within litigation rather than risking the cost as well as the potential loss, okay? Next is try not to become emotionally involved. This is, this is true. I've seen this in all my clients. The more emotionally involved you are in the case, I'm not saying that you haven't been wronged. I'm not saying there hasn't been something wrong happening in either direction, right? Whether you're being accused of something that you didn't do or the other party did something and you're accusing them of it, right? The more emotionally involved you get in a case, the more expensive it's going to be. If you're looking at just the facts and the evidence and what is admissible at trial and all of these details, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be no emotional. Don't misunderstand that. I'm not saying not to get any emotion involved, but I'm saying don't let your emotions rule you. Don't let your emotions dictate how much money you're going to be spending on this legal matter. You will pay more. You will absolutely pay more the more emotionally you get with this. The more you want to be right will directly affect how much your bills will cost if you're paying. Now, contingency-wise, that's a different story entirely. So try to not get as emotionally involved in it as you can. Listen to your attorney when he's talking about the facts and the evidence and things that are admissible in court and what you can do to push that along. So the more emotional you get, the more it's going to cost you. The less emotional, the better. The less it's going to cost you. All right, next, limiting your communications. This does not mean to not communicate with your attorney, okay? This means don't bug them all the time, especially if they've communicated with you. Like, for instance, if a hearing is coming up in a month, right? You might go 3-4 weeks without hearing from your attorney. That doesn't mean nothing's happening. That just means that he doesn't need to talk to you about something, or she, he or she. So limit your communication, consolidate things. If you have multiple questions, don't ask them don't send them 5 emails a day. Don't send her 5 emails a day. Write down your questions, keep them, send them once a day or once a week. That's even better. Because realistically, he or she is working on probably several different matters, and your time isn't, he or she doesn't have all the time in the world to strictly handle just your matter. So if you're constantly asking him things that either aren't relevant, aren't important, not really. I'm not saying that there aren't anything there, but if you're inundating them with questions, it's going to cost more money. If there's something urgent or very, very important, then yes, absolutely. Make sure you are asking the right questions and getting your questions answered and providing the information that the attorney needs. That's the other thing. If the attorney's having to ask you repeatedly for information, or that there's discovery that's needed, this type of thing, it's going to cost you more money, because I'm going to have to keep following up with you. And even in a worst scenario, if you don't communicate properly, you could end up with either sanctions or additional costs from the court that can directly have a negative outcome on your case. Okay, so use time wisely, right? Don't bother your attorney every day for something, okay? And I'm not saying you're a bother. I'm saying that when you're doing it with the intent of trying to get information out of them, give them time to respond to you, right? Give them 24 hours, 72 hours, something of that nature. Most attorneys, in my engagement agreements and in my welcome letters, I outline the time period that I will take to get back to somebody, because sometimes I don't have an immediate answer. I might have to do some research. There might be a reason why I cannot provide you with an answer. So don't assume that I've got I wish I was Encyclopedia Britannica, or that I had all of the laws memorized, or I had every solution possible memorized. I don't. I have to research stuff. I have to look at things from the court. I have to evaluate things before I can provide you with an answer. So when you're talking with others, make sure, or when you're talking with your attorney, that you're using your time wisely and you're not inundating them with unnecessary questions or excessive questions, right? Do a little bit of research on your own if you can, and then talk to your attorney about it. Don't tell them that Google was right and they're wrong, because don't even get me started on that. We'll talk about Google versus lawyer on a future episode. We're coming up with that. It's going to be fun. All right, next. So staying proactive. Regularly review your operations and consult attorneys and legal people early. There's a lot of problems we can solve if we know about them ahead of time. But if you are ignoring things or putting them off or doing those types of things, a lot of people do because legal stuff is scary, then what we could have solved for a few $100s is going to cost you thousands or potentially thousands. That's why contracts are so important. If you are serious about your business, you need to be serious about your contracts. If you're serious about your life, you need to be serious about legal stuff, right? There's ways to solve your problems ahead of time for a lot less money than if you wait and you make bad choices or you procrastinate. Procrastination and legal is expensive. All right, next, keeping up with changes in regulations and industry standards. Knowing what laws have changed, things that are going on in your industry, things that are going on in your life, paying attention to what passes in either Congress or your local state legislature. All of these things will give you the help that you need to make sure that you're saving the money that you want. Because if you're staying proactive, you're not going to break the law or you're not going to risk being sued. It's going to be a much better outcome because I can solve a problem here for relatively cheap, right? Or it can be very expensive later on. That's just how law works. It's just very different than the things. So stay proactive. Next, educating yourself. Attend relevant legal workshops or webinars. Subscribe to legal newsletters or blogs in your industry. Watch my videos. That's the whole point of me bringing these to you, is to give you the information that you need to help you run successful lives and business. Ways to save money, ways to work with attorneys, ways to give you a better opportunity to make better choices. Education is the key to all of this. Now, YouTube isn't necessarily everything everywhere. I'm not saying that should be your single source of information, or Facebook or anything, right? So subscribing to legal journals and journals and types of ways that getting legal information about your industry will go a long ways towards giving you the information that you need. But don't be afraid to go out there and at least learn about it. Remember, though, Google only answers the question that you're asking. It doesn't know to ask you the next 5 questions or the next 10 questions or whatever the questions after that. So they're good in a checkers sort of way, but they're terrible in a chess sort of way. So keep that in mind. Get yourself an idea of what's going on, but don't expect that Google can solve your problems by itself. Because while it's a great tool, you wouldn't try to paint the Mona Lisa by numbers on Google, right? You wouldn't try to build the Eiffel Tower with Google, right? Like that would not be your source to do big things, to do great things. Quick answers, sure, right? Everybody uses Google. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't put everything in Google because it doesn't know that there might be something wrong or off or different. And the same thing goes with AI. Use AI as a tool, like ChatGPT. Use it as a tool, great tool. But don't rely on it in its entirety. Recognize that it's not going to be 100% right. There's going to be potential errors in it, and you don't want to stake your life and your claims on it. So that's it. Those are the tips, 7 of them. They can help you save money on legal costs and have better outcomes with your legal matters. And that's really what we're talking about here. So keep that in mind as you're doing your thing, that realistically, your attorney doesn't like billing you unless they have to. Most of them, not all of them, some of them can be difficult. But for the most part, keep that in mind, that you get what you pay for, right? Free is free. And I get sometimes that's where you're at. Totally understand that. But if you can afford to hire someone to do it right the first time, let me tell you, I've prevented many a mistake. I've helped many businesses and many individuals solve problems for actually a lot less money than it would have cost them had they have made different choices. So if you've gotten if you've gotten value out of this video, don't forget to hit subscribe and like. And know that we go live these days whenever we can. All right. Have a great one.